Welcome to Inside OTHM, the podcast where we go behind the scenes, inside the ideas, and into the impact shaping OTHM today. This is Inside OTHM. Hello and welcome back to our podcast Inside OTHM. My name is Tom and I'm your host. And today's topic, we're going to be talking about one thing that's really important within education, which is accreditation. On this podcast, we're going to be talking about what it means, why it matters, and also what people often get wrong about it as well. And to help us with that today, we are joined with Elise Labram, who is our Accreditation Manager. Hello and welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me, Tom.
So before we get into the kind of nitty-gritty about what accreditation is, could you just tell us a little bit about your role? And also, because you've got quite an interesting role in terms of, you get quite a good insight into different education providers around the world.
Yeah.
What is one thing you love about your job?
Yeah. I'm Elise. I'm the Accreditation Manager here at OTHM. I've been here for just over a year now. So I originally started within the partnerships team. I was a relationship manager, checking in with our centres. And from there, I've progressed to now be the Accreditation Manager. So it's kind of the next step on from partnerships. So that's quite nice having that background, knowing how centres start off with OTHM and how they get passed over to accreditation. My role is very different day to day. I talk to a lot of different people with a lot of different experiences, all from around the world. So I think I'd say that's kind of the most interesting part of my job that I really enjoy. No 2 days are the same.
Mm-hmm. That's really great to hear. So let's start from the beginning. So can you explain the process of accreditation for our OTHM centres?
Yeah. So so they start off with partnerships, and then once all the documents have been compiled, they then get passed over to me in accreditation. Partnerships, their role is more to compile all the documents that are required, and then when they get passed to myself, that's then when I have to do more of the detailed checks. Mm-hmm. So whether that's their certificate of incorporation, so checking your business registration, I have to check that. I have to check the staff are adequately qualified as well, so ensure that all staff have their certificates, their educational certificates. All staff have their up-to-date CVs as well, and check that the staff that the centres are proposing align to the qualifications that they're requiring approval of.
That's awesome. So from your experience, what is one of the most common misconceptions about accreditation for learners and also centres as well?
Yeah. So in terms of accreditation from a centre's perspective, so my role is to ensure that a centre is adequately qualified and adequately able to deliver our qualifications. So I'm approving a centre as a whole, that they're able to deliver our qualifications to the standards that we expect. That are not held just by us as OTHM, but also we're Ofqual regulated, so we have to meet another level of requirements as well. So
with that, when you talk about the standards you have to meet, why is accreditation important for education centres then?
Well, as we're Ofqual regulated, it gives another level of credibility to centres. So by them being OTHM approved, they're basically saying that they have met our standards from an Ofqual perspective as well. So it gives centres another level of credibility in that the learners that they take on board know that the centre is of a certain standard. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so if a centre has just communicated with our partnerships team, say they want to come on board, partner with us and become an approved centre, where do you sit in all of this in terms of that kind of dynamic? What is the difference? Is there a difference between partnerships and accreditation, and what is that in terms of your role?
So obviously partnerships, that's the centre's first kind of communication with OTHM. So those relationships are formed back at that stage. Once they get passed to myself in accreditation, obviously I've got to keep that relationship going. The difference, I guess, is with partnerships, like I said earlier, it's more about collating all of their documents. So when it comes to myself in accreditation, I have to check the details. So I don't think there's really that much difference in terms of I still communicate with them as much as, centres would communicate with partnerships. And that's kind of that's a really important part of the accreditation process, is keeping that communication open. Yeah. Even if I go back to a centre and I say, oh, please, can you make some amendments on this document? That's totally fine. And we understand that, amendments can't be made overnight. And that's also okay. So it's just that communication. If a centre comes back to us and says, yes, we're going to make these amendments, but it might take us 1 week, it might take us 2 weeks, that's fine. Just let us know, and then we know not to chase you.
Yeah.
And, actually taking your time to ensure that the documents that have been requested to be amended, if you do take your time, that's kind of, a good sign that you're doing it properly. So actually, take your time. These amendments aren't...
It's kind of the sense of the collaboration process, like we were talking in the previous episode of how everything seems very collaborative,
sure.
You're there to support them.
Yeah, definitely.
And on that note, so obviously when they do become come on board, and obviously they have a certain, range of qualifications that they want to deliver, further down the line, if they're partnering with us, for further many years, if they want to then, if we, because we have such a big variety of different qualifications, we also have ones being developed. Say, for example, they've got those initial qualifications that they're delivering, but they want to add to their curriculum. Is that something that they can do?
Yeah, definitely. So when a centre first comes on board with OTHM, we limit centres to 10 qualifications in the first instance, just because by taking a smaller quantity of qualifications, we have seen that centres do better. It's less overwhelming. They can kind of put more focus onto this smaller selection of qualifications. So once we've seen that you're delivering those qualifications well, you've got learners registered, you've got learners certificated as well, you're then definitely able to add on more qualifications to your centre. So we have a separate process for that. It's the additional qualifications process, and there's a form on our website. Our website is quite good for underneath the centre information tab. There's another tab through there that's the approval and change request forms, and within there is the additional qualifications form, which is downloadable. So it's similar to what they would provide in the initial application. So they would just say, we want to undertake these qualifications, and here are our proposed tutors, and here are their supporting documents, and then I would review them. Hopefully they are suitable, and then those qualifications just get added to their centre at no extra cost as well.
Brilliant. That's really, really good to know. So now going on to a bit of a fun part. So I thought to help us with a kind of the myth-busting exercise, just to maybe help support some of the misconceptions we have about accreditation or may have. So I'm going to read you some statements, and you're going to tell me whether they're true or false.
Okay.
And why as well.
Okay.
So let's just get straight into it. So first statement, accreditation guarantees employment after completing a qualification. True or false?
False. So accreditation relates to a centre's ability to deliver qualifications to a certain standard. The ability for a learner to obtain employment once they've completed a qualification, that's separate. That's dependent more on you as an individual. So, the job market that you're going into, your other experiences that you hold. Obviously, having a qualification puts you in a good position to apply for jobs, etc. It doesn't necessarily guarantee that you're going to get a job.
Okay, so next statement, only universities can receive accreditation.
False. So we have a wide range of providers, ranging from startups to quite small centres that in the initial instance they only undertake a couple of qualifications whilst they're building themselves. We also have the opposite end of the spectrum, very large centres that have lots of learners come through their doors. So no, anyone, if you're in a position where you're able to provide what we ask for when it comes to applying to become OTHM approved, anyone's able to apply, regardless of your kind of size of your centre.
Perfect. So next statement, accreditation standards are the same worldwide.
So in terms of, obviously we work with lots of centres from all around the world. Our OTHM standards are the same regardless of which country the centre is based in. So what I ask of a centre in terms of their documents, if they're based in the UK, is exactly the same what I would ask if they're based in India. Obviously some of the documents they provide may be different in terms of their regulatory documents. But no, what we ask from is the same worldwide.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, if you go to a different provider, they may ask for different things. But no, for us, from an OTHM perspective, it's the same regardless of where you're based.
Perfect. You can verify an institution's accreditation status online.
Yeah, so if you go to our website, on our homepage, I believe it is, if you scroll down, there's a section where you can just type in a centre name, and if they are OTHM approved, they'll come up. You can click through to their website, you can see which OTHM qualifications they're approved to deliver. So yeah, it's on our homepage.
Perfect. Accreditation is only relevant to the institution and not the program. I think you've already touched upon this at all, but is there anything more that you want to kind of explain on that?
So yeah, that's correct in that our qualifications are Ofqual regulated. So the accreditation relates to the centre that is delivering those qualifications. The qualifications themselves that we have that centres can choose from are all Ofqual regulated. So that's kind of the difference in the way that the word accreditation is used. So accreditation relates to a centre's ability to deliver a qualification, but the qualifications themselves are Ofqual regulated.
Mm-hmm. That's perfect. And the final statement, we can still support centres if they're not quite ready to partner with us.
Yeah, so obviously when a centre first contacts us and is with partnerships, they do a great job of supporting them to prepare their documents and make sure everything is there. As I've said earlier, they don't necessarily check the detail of the documents that are provided. That then happens when it gets passed over to accreditation. Once it comes over to me in accreditation, however, that's not to say that if I check your documents and there's something missing or there's something that perhaps needs a little amendment, that you'll be, turned away. We do work collaboratively, and I'll email you back and I'll say, within this document, please, can you make these amendments? Or we need a little bit more information on this document, for example. So no, it's a constant process. And like I said earlier, the real important thing is the communication. If those lines of communication are kept open, then that collaboration happens very quickly, and the whole process can be very smooth and can happen quite quickly.
Perfect. Well, that's been really, really insightful, and thank you so much for your insights. Before we wrap up, what kind of advice would you give to centres wanting to partner with OTHM, and that would probably, would support them through the accreditation process?
Yeah, I think, what you mentioned earlier about kind of who can apply to become OTHM approved. I think even if you're a small startup, like everybody starts somewhere. So I think even if you're a small startup, but you want to get that OTHM approval, it's definitely worth contacting us. Mm-hmm. As when you get that first email from us that says what documents are required, really take your time to go through that list and make sure you do have what we require. If you have to take some time to prepare it, that's only a good thing. That shows that you're really you're taking it seriously. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think I would say centres that want to partner with us, regardless of your current situation, it's always worth contacting us. We're here to help you. Mm-hmm. We want to have a variety of centres approved by OTHM. Mm. So yeah, definitely get in touch and we can help you. And even if you're not ready right now, that's fine. We'll help you in that. We'll say what does need to be sent over to us, and then you can come back at a later date once you are ready. Mm-hmm. So yeah.
Yeah, it's really nice that we've kind of got that relationship, even beyond the partnership process, through accreditation.
Yeah, definitely.
We do want to bring the strengths out of these centres as well, which is really, really great.
Yeah.
So from your experience from transferring from partnerships to accreditation, what is one thing you've taken away from that?
Well, it's been really interesting transitioning from my role in partnerships to now being in accreditation, because I've seen obviously the importance of both roles, but how they differ as well. So within accreditation, it's really important, as our qualifications are Ofqual regulated, we're held to such high standards. That's why when we do ask for our documents, they're also held to a high standard. We've got to ensure that our qualifications are delivered by tutors that are adequately qualified, whether that's so they have to have either a teaching qualification preferably, or have extensive experience having been a teacher in the subject that they're proposed to deliver, alongside also having subject relevant qualifications. So I think the difference for me from coming from partnerships to accreditation is kind of,
I guess you kind of get to see a bit more of the insights into the the centre itself, don't you?
Yeah.
And you get to kind of, be an observer and, how they can meet our standards.
Yeah,
can
definitely.
they meet our standards?
Yeah. And there's not necessarily it's not necessarily just a tick box of yes or no. Like, people's experience does really play quite a large role in it as well. That's why their CVs are so important. People have whatever qualifications they have, but people have a lot of life experience as well. That does count for something as well. So it's really important that when centres send across their staff CVs, that they're kept up to date, because it might not just be myself looking at their literal certificates, but I do look at their CVs as well to see if whichever qualification they're proposing to deliver aligns with that staff member in terms of both their certificates, but also what's written on their CV. Like I said earlier, it's not just a straightforward yes or no, or you've got this certificate, so you're definitely. Yes, that is the case in some respects, but also the CV is really important to see what experiences they have as well, to kind of go hand in hand with that certificate for me to be able to make a judgment on whether they're suitably qualified to deliver our qualifications.
Well, thank you so much for that. At least that was really, really insightful. That's all the time we have for today. And it's been amazing to get to understand a bit more about the accreditation process and, a bit of insight into your role as well. And we really hope that you have enjoyed this episode and it's really helped you to understand a bit more about accreditation. If you enjoyed this episode, please do follow us on our socials and also on our YouTube channel. You can search for us at OTHM Qualifications. And please don't forget to subscribe to our podcast as well. And please reach out to us at any time if you've got any suggestions about other topics you want us to do in the future. Until next time, everybody, take care.
Thanks for having me, Tom.